Speaking freedom, giving you the answers to be free. Be free.
Ladies and gentlemen, tonight's performance is about to begin.
Welcome to Speaking Freedom TV. I have a special guest. Of course, I'm Dr. Casey, your host, and I have a special guest, Karine. How are you? Please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, Dr. Casey. Thank you for having me. This is so much fun. I always love having conversations with new people, so this is great. My name is Karine Benard, and I am the sex positive relationship designer. And a lot of people don't know what a sex positive relationship designer is. It's basically a coach that works with sex positive couples or people that want to shift things. But if you think about our society, we are told one way to have relationships. You know, it's like religious and societal programming says monogamy only, and it's the only way to have a good relationship and happily ever after. And, you know, your partner is going to fulfill all your needs and you're going to be happy forever. And very few people actually experience that. They
Right.
actually don't experience happily ever after. And so either people are just really fucked up or there's something wrong with the system. And so I draw attention to the fact that we get to choose and create our own design for our relationships, whatever that might look like. And so we get to redesign. We get to design your space. And I had that idea because, like, how many of us redesign our homes? Like, if you're in your house for any length of time, you're like, oh, it's time for an update. I'm going to change things up, change the colors, change the style and the furniture, whatever. And we don't think anything about that or even hiring a designer to help us with that. But like the relationship that's supposed to last forever, we don't change a thing.
Right.
Like, what on earth is that all about? We don't renegotiate the relationship. We don't redesign it. We don't check in to see if it's working for us. I mean, forever is a long time.
It is.
I was 22 when I got married and I was in Bible school, and now I am not. You know, and so I'm a very different person now than I was at 22. Yes. And to think that my relationship would stay the same is ridiculous. Yet that's the model that we live by. And we wonder why we're struggling or resentful or not having our need met or feeling lonely or this or that and feeling unempowered for the most part.
So when you saw the show request for a guest, what made you want to be a part of the show? Like, was it something in particular?
Well, it's funny because we kind of like our paths crossed because I was looking for guests for my show. And then you popped in and you were like, hey, and then you're like, I have a show too. And so let's do this. And so what happened was it was so cool because this whole sex positive community came out of that post. Like I had 48 responses, 48 to that post. And I just was super authentic when I was like, I'm looking for this. I'm looking for someone who's sex positive, who doesn't mind talking about possibly ethical non-monogamy or about anything sexual or whatever taboo. Like that's what I'm looking for. And all these people came out of the woodwork. And how awesome was that? And then you came up and I was like, ooh, that sounds like fun. That sounds like a fun show to be on. And you very much value authenticity as well. And it's funny because even your format for your show is similar to mine in the sense that, no, let's not talk before. Let's get to know each other as we go. And it's so hard to, it's so hard to repeat sort of what you know about someone. So it's really cool. I love that organic process of getting to know someone. So that's one of the things. And you had a couple things. You also have sort of a veterans show as well. And that piqued my interest as well because I'm not a veteran, but I'm a military kid. So that's part of my story is my dad was in the military. And so
that changes your the parameters of what you will see and experience and how you experience life a lot of ways, whether you are whether your parent is active duty or out of the military, because both ways you're dealing with a parent that's a little bit more financially free than most parents. they have a little bit more leeway and benefits than others. So they are able to operate and move totally different. So your life experience is really different. I try to teach my children that all the time, but they children, so they don't really get it.
Well, that's interesting. I've never really thought of it from that perspective, but yeah, you're right. And it does make, like, my mom is a stay-at-home mom, and it makes that very much possible. And you don't really question that. And so this thing that you aspire, and so for me, that was very much part of my story, is that I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And so basically any career goals I possibly had were just not
as important.
Yeah, they weren't what do you call it when someone's like encouraging you to do something? They weren't nurtured. Like I was like, I either wanted to be a musician or a surgeon. And I decided music would be much better as a mom, because I could work that around my kids' schedules a lot easier. Yeah, and surgeon, I was like, and my ultimate goal was to be a mom, so I couldn't see that fitting. And also, I didn't grow up with a model of having two working parents, and I didn't understand how that would look. And let's be honest, so my background, let's go back a little bit, to when I was not free, since that's what we're talking about, right?
Yes, your journey to freedom.
Yeah, so let's go back to when I was not free. I was born into a family. My dad was what do you call it? Oh my goodness, the opposite of Catholic.
I'm not sure. There's so many religions out there.
Oh, I know. Protestant. There we go.
Okay. Protestant. Okay.
So my dad was Protestant. So I'm from Quebec. So Quebec is Catholic. Anything French, any French schools, everything's Catholic. My mom grew up Catholic. My dad grew up Protestant in a Catholic culture. And that meant he went to English school and things like that, because there were no French Protestant schools. That was an English thing. Okay. So just to put that in perspective a little bit. So when my parents got married, my mom was still Catholic, but she was questioning a lot of things. So when I was born, she was still Catholic, but she shortly after that converted to Christianity, and she became a born again Christian. So like, we're talking like fundamentalist, evangelical, born again Christian. That is the flavor we're talking about here. Okay.
That's a big difference from the way the Catholics function.
Yeah. And I'm glad you say that, because people are like, oh, I was religious too when I grew up. I was Catholic. And I was like, oh no, you don't understand. I did not consider you Christian.
Right.
Catholics were not Christian to me. They did not have the truth. So that's a little bit of the setup for my background. And so because my mom had been, quote unquote, rescued from Catholicism, her whole existence was wrapped up in Christ and God saving her from all this. And basically, she had none of her own thinking, I'm gonna say. Like she's a very
she could be an intellectual, but when you get wrapped into religion, like really drawn into it, you lose your own individual concept of understanding, because now it's more of a group think. What religions say is what it should be. And it's really kind of, I want to say, prevalent when you go from one religion to another, because you're just changing systems, but you're not changing the extremism within you that's drawing you to it.
Right. So to her, it was like she was, and the prevalent message I grew up with is, you are nothing without Christ. You are nothing. You are a sinner, and you need Christ so you can be white as snow, and God, anyways, I had a loving version of God, though, not a wrathful, judgmental version of God. I mean, that's what I thought. But so the message was very clear. Let's just talk about sexuality here. It was very clear from a young age that masturbation was absolutely wrong. Oh my gosh. I was 4 the first time my mom
Okay,
caught
so I
me.
don't want to talk about that so
No,
much because we're going to talk
we
about
are
that
going to,
on the
but
world of sex.
just to put it in
Okay,
perspective, that
okay.
sexuality was so not, because that's, I mean, I am in that realm now. So
Right.
it's part of that, like, breaking free. So that was so heavily ingrained in that shame, right? Of things. And so when we talk about, like, growing up, I was a very happy, content child. Like, I didn't have any issues with my faith or anything. Like, that's all I knew. I was a church pianist since I was 13. Like, I was just all in, and I play the piano, I sing, I do all the things, that is perfect for a pastor's wife, right? Like,
Right,
so
right.
so I decided to go to Bible school, as any good Christian teenager would do. Um, and so I went to Bible school. I went to Moody Bible Institute in Chicago, Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
So all the way from Canada.
To
Here's,
Chicago.
yeah.
To the
And
Windy City.
yes, exactly. And my parents actually lived in Anchorage, Alaska at the time, because my dad, like I said, was in the Canadian Air Force. So we moved around my whole life. And the church was our home everywhere we went. So it felt like a family in many ways, because I always knew my role. Oh, I'm the musician. I go into that role. And my mom was like the wise sage, who knew everything about the Bible and this, and people came to her for advice and all that kind of stuff. And so everything I knew, I just knew,
Right.
I know that I know that I know.
So how did you go from Bible
Uh-huh.
school to sex?
Positive relationship designing.
Yes, because just generally speaking, in church, sex is one of those off of the radar topics.
Oh yeah.
So for you to change, not change, for you to grow into
Mhm.
your sexuality and make this a part of your journey to freedom and your journey in general of growth, how did you go from Bible school to sex designer?
So I have a podcast, obviously. That's how we met. It's called Breaking Free Authentically, the sex positive relationship podcast. And on my first episode, it's called Bible School Graduate Turned Playboy Enthusiast. So I got married at 22. I met my husband at Bible school, of course, because it's bridal college, right? That's where.
Right.
And you can't have sex before you're married. So really, you're on the lookout for that.
Yeah, and
Very early
it
on.
makes you actually get married probably a little bit faster
Oh
and a
yeah.
little bit more unconsciously
Yeah.
let without a lot of long-term thought, a lot of underdeveloped conversations because
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, although you're thinking about those things, you're really thinking about having some good old sex because now you
Mhm.
finally met somebody in the church actually pushes you to marriage. Like you get saved, you be celibate or, without sin, and then you get married because that's just the next thing that you do.
Well, yeah, you can't. That's the escalator, right? You
Mm-hmm,
can't, and you can't have sex without getting married. So you make sure that you're married. And if you don't want to sin, you better get married young enough, because you're going to
So,
screw up if you don't, right?
and you're
So,
going to hell. You're definitely going to hell
yeah.
if you
So I
screw
had
up.
been engaged before meeting my husband. So I got engaged in my first year of Bible college, and then we ended up breaking up. It's fine. And then I met him, and so it's just interesting. We got married at 22, and I remember that whole idea that he said, if and I always had guy friends growing up. Like, I'm just I always had guy friends, and I'm physical, like I love cuddles and touch or whatever, but it wasn't in a sexual way, even though I am a sexual person. So I got married. Before we got engaged, he says to me, if we get married, that this is going to have to stop, right? And I was like chasing a guy friend up and down the halls at school, Bible school. And there was nothing wrong with that. Like, he had no issue with that. It's just that didn't look good for
Right,
him if
right.
his wife was doing that. So basically, a piece of me died that day. A part of my freedom left that day. And if I was going to choose him, I had to choose not to have my guy friends anymore because that wasn't appropriate. So that was the first big loss of freedom for me. But I desperately wanted to be married and to have a family. So it outweighed that, right? Or so you think.
And a lot of times, especially when you're younger, and a lot of people just on social media right now, they don't consider this. When you're younger, you think about all of the happy possibilities and all of the, the frilly things. You don't think about the tough parts of marriage and the things that you have to get through in order to really achieve a successful marriage. And even in divorce, it doesn't mean that marriage was a failure, but people don't think about that. So nowadays, when you see people on social media and they're talking about marriage, and if you've been married and divorced before and you have some insight, as soon as you say something, then they think that something you're bitter or something like that. And it's like, no, it's just not what you think it is. And once you've been married before, you don't, unless you are like blinded by the societal standpoint of marriage, you're not in a rush to really jump back into one of those things because you really learn that it's hard.
The model is really takes away freedom because like even the ceremony, right? It's like the two become one. And so by that alone, you are taught, especially in the church, that you lose your individuality. And I remember one of my, not my roommate, but my, a girl on my floor. And when she was getting married, she was adamant that the two candles, when they went to light the unity candle, she was going to put them back, but keep them lit. And I was like, oh, what? Like, that was like shocking to me. How could you be such a rebel kind of thing, right? Like, you want to keep your individuality. How rude, your marriage is never going to work kind of thing.
Because, I mean, that's the mindset that you're told.
Right? Yeah. So you can see why there's so many people, especially in, fundamentalist Christianity, that are like to me, I'm a very powerful woman. I'm a leader. I have my own thoughts. I'm very strong. I'm a very strong person. I moved my whole life. I had to adapt and make friends and get to know people everywhere I went. And I could do that easily. I just adapted. So I'm very adaptable. But when I got married, I decided that I was going to be this good, submissive wife. And basically, I gave up anything that I thought would not be submissive, and let's just say that I studied relationships for fun in high school. Like, that's what I read for fun, is psychology books about relationships and marriage and communication and all that. So like total psychology nerd, but I wanted to get it right. Like, I wasn't gonna, my parents didn't have a great marriage. They're still together, but like, I didn't want that. Right. And so my mom was like, don't marry someone like your dad. I love my dad. He's awesome. But they're not good for each other in a lot of ways. And so they're both codependent, right? This is what happens is you lose your identity. You're not allowed to be an individual. So you become codependent. And then
that can make you resentful sometimes. Just being so codependent because you don't know who you are anymore. And it literally is disabling. It's it really stifles you as a person overall. But literally, Christianity isn't about I want to say any religion, but mainly we're talking about Christianity. It is not about any type of individuality, because as soon as you get saved, then you can't even be who you used to be anymore. You have to shed everything and then be with Christ. But in that, you're supposed to know you, because literally you were made to create, to do, to be, but with the anointing and the Spirit of God upon your life, not for you to dismantle everything God created you to be so you can be somebody else that he didn't make you, so that you can it just, but
and the analogy is that we're sheep, right? The analogy is that we're sheep, and what do sheep do? Well, sheep are not the smartest. They don't think for themselves. They just freaking follow. They follow the shepherd wherever the shepherd takes them. Brainless, brainwashed. They just don't really think. And that's the model. And any other thing, like if you're a goat, which goats are a lot of fun and they kind of like do their own thing. You can't really rein them in very well. A goat is representative of like the sinful people, you know, and not the chosen of Christ. Anyways, it's just, there's a lot of imagery there. But all that to say that I chose to be a sheep.
Right.
And I wanted my husband to be the head, and I was perfectly happy being the neck because the neck supports the head, and without the neck, the head can't turn. So, you know, there was all these beautiful analogies to how submission is so beautiful. Chosen and submission can be beautiful.
Submission can be beautiful.
It absolutely can be. It absolutely can be. And for the most part, I loved that choice of being submissive. But I didn't realize that I gave up. Like, to me, it was rude to have my own desires or my own wants. And it was even more rude to express that. So I just kind of went along and just tried to please him by saying, so what are we going to do this weekend or this or that or whatever. And then, you know, like the other thing is, okay, so I had to give up my guy friends, right? And when that happens and you get married and you're told that they're your other half and that, you know, marriage will meet your needs, and all these things, you start to get resentful when you're not getting the things that you want from your partner because you're told that you should be getting it from your partner.
And only from your partner.
Yeah. And you haven't thought that through very much. And it shows up as frustration and resentment, but you just need to be content. Like, you're not supposed to complain about this and not have unrealistic expectations. Oh, and never mind the fact that life is just hard and you sacrifice in life, you know, and, you know, I'll sleep when I'm dead, you know, and you just work hard and you suffer through it and you just be responsible in life. Just fucking be responsible and stay in your lane and don't really think about what you want because that's selfish.
Right. No. And it's crazy because, especially when you think about it in a religious standpoint, because religion teaches you that God will give you the desires of your heart, but then at the same time tell you really that you're not supposed to have any of your own desires and not to lean to your own understanding. But because if God is giving me the desires of my heart, then there's some understanding that I should be able to lean to that God gave me so that I can have those desires. But if we're not leaning to it, so it's like, you want me to give away who I am while still being who I am, while figuring out what God wants me to do, but not really teaching me purpose. But you want me to be this perfect person that I can do no wrong, depending on who you're talking to determines on what's wrong. You know, it's so many rules that
all your worth comes from bringing glory to God ultimately, right? And that's how you get out of it. Like, that's how you can justify all of this. It's like, well, you should get all your joy and peace and everything in life from bringing glory to God. So if you're doing his will, then you should be happy. And so everybody is walking around going, praise God, and I'm doing God's will, and we're not really being authentic or talking about what it is that we might be struggling with. I was always trying to I was always a know-it-all. I knew everything. I was the perfect parent. I was the perfect wife. And I always was trying to help people be that.
I call this all Christian denial, because when you get saved, it's like, as a Christian, you use a magic wand. The wand is Jesus, and you just zaps Jesus on everything. And, you know, nothing is wrong, nothing is missing, nothing is broken. And you just, you know, like nothing ever existed after that, but you never actually address the issues, which is why people end up having underlying sicknesses and all of that, because all of that festers.
Well, and you're not allowed to question, right? Because question is basically a sin. Because you're not trusting, you're not having faith. And childlike faith is revered more than anything. Well, children
ask a lot of damn questions.
They do.
Children ask a whole lot of fucking questions.
So, okay, I should have used it. I'm just having childlike faith. Like, why? Why? Why are you doing that? Why are you doing Anyways, no. Okay, so let's jump to 10 years ago. So I've been, like, officially, if we want to say, I've been married 25 years. I'll get to that. So 25 years ago, I got married. 10 years ago, something happened, and someone very important in my life left the faith, or had some serious questions, and everything changed, right? And so I had a lot of respect for this person, and so I was left going, what do I do with this information? Because this person doesn't say anything
because they're not
without
allowed
thinking
to.
it. Well, they don't say anything. They're not the type of person to just say something to please someone, or they're not selfish people in terms of like, I don't feel like being Christian anymore, so I'm just gonna, go do my own thing. And literally Christians, the way they see it is either you hate God
or you're a Christian.
Or you're a Christian, or you just want to be selfish and go live your own life. But if it's not any of those two things, there's no framework for it. So you're still put in one of those categories. And it's like, that was not the category at all. The category was, okay, I want to deepen my faith. I want to grow closer to the Lord.
Right.
And I just have some questions that I want answered if I'm going to take that step and go all in and really give my life to the Lord and just trust him implicitly.
Completely. Right.
Yeah. So thus was the journey of this person. And a couple years later, after much praying and searching, everything fell apart for them. All the things that they were asking God to show them, it was showing less and less that it was true and that it all fit together. And it was like the most devastating thing. So fast forward, they share this with me and I'm devastated. And I'm thinking, what do we do with this information? So it got me on the journey to I was like, well, I'm not someone who doesn't think through something for myself. I've been hit with a lot of information here that I can't deny. I can't just throw away and go back to, it's like if a kid is taught about Santa Claus and how Santa Claus is not real, all of a sudden they can't just go back to just not hearing that anymore.
Yeah, because it now you start to see everything that corresponds with it not being real, the things that you were previously blind to or, just oblivious to. Now it's like, well, wait a minute. I did see mom putting the stuff up and I did, and this was happening. And kids are very intelligent. Yeah,
I did question that, and I maybe was right, I'm not so crazy or whatever. So it's a really great tool, actually, that one, to get kids to start to reason for themselves and think through things. But okay, so I couldn't unsee it, is what I'm getting at. So to me, I had been taught that, those sex people, and I mean, how much was that shamed in the church? Any teenage girl in the church that got pregnant, and it was a small country church, she had to go up and basically apologize to the whole congregation and repent for her sin. And I'm thinking, where's the guy that got her pregnant?
That got her pregnant.
What the fuck is that? and there was just such shame around sex. And of course, I'm a sexual person and I'm sort of keeping that at bay. Trying to do the thing, be the good Christian. So here was my curiosity. I was like, okay, so these sex people and sexuality is so wrong and so bad, and the world cannot possibly have any love in them. This is what I've been taught. There's no joy in the world. You can't love without Christ. Everyone is miserable in the world.
Right.
Let's take that a step further. We're going to go to those sex people, and they must be even more miserable, and they're full of shame, and they don't have any respect for themselves, and they're doing this out of coercion, and they don't have any self-respect. Let's just say that. Okay. So, curious person trying to make sense of everything. Let's do this as quickly as possible because I am a mom of 3 and I'm working and there's a lot going on. I don't have time to do all that 2 years of research,
right,
and read all the, religious books and blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to do a practical experiment. I have Sirius Radio right now, and there's a Playboy radio channel. I'm just going to start listening to Playboy and find out if these people are so miserable and find out what's really going on here. Well,
I can't wait to talk to you on the world of sex. This is going to be a fun show.
So what I discovered was my people. Yeah. And I was like, what is going on here? These people are so intelligent.
And free.
Oh my gosh. And like, I love deep, intelligent conversation, but like, sheep don't have a lot of deep, intelligent
Mm-mm.
conversation because they don't ask questions. They're not really that curious.
Even
Okay.
if they were at any point, they have been muffled and to the point to where
Brainwashed.
they cannot even form a question, and it is crazy.
Because it's wrong to
Mm-hmm.
question, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
we're not told it's wrong to question, but it's wrong to
Yeah,
question.
it's definitely wrong.
It's
It's
wrong.
definitely.
It's wrong because if you question too much, you might get called out and you
Mm-hmm.
might be, disciplined in front of
Mm-hmm.
people or blah, blah, blah,
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
And the
So,
really thing is that because if you start asking questions, one, you'll find that sometimes those people that you're looking at as leadership, they really don't have the answers. They don't know.
no.
They've never looked it up because somebody told them that they shouldn't look it up. So even if you go to them with solid information, like I was just having a debate because CC Winan said that she didn't want to do I'm Every Woman or BB, whatever. It's
Yeah.
she didn't want to do I'm
BB.
Every Woman because it
Yeah.
said I can cast a spell. And I'm thinking like, well, every time you pray, technically you're casting a spell. I mean,
No,
like
that's
technically,
witchcraft,
but
Casey.
it's the
Come on.
so the debate is that it's the same exact thing because when you start talking about if you consider or think about witchcraft, but you also look at you're talking about calling casting the blood of Jesus, you're drinking blood and drinking his body, I mean eating his body, like all of these things
When you
are the
go
same
back and look
thing.
at it all, you're like, what the fuck
Like this
is
is
this?
really this is witchcraft in its true form. But people, because they put Jesus' name on it, it's like no, that makes this different because our
It's off
intention,
limits.
yeah,
It's off limits.
it's no way that is the same thing. That is totally different because the Bible said. But do you realize that you are calling on an outside entity and you're asking them to move people, places, and things into your favor? That is the same thing that spell casting is doing. And people are like, no, you're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm really not, but it's hard to receive when you're in the middle of eating your communion and trying to figure out, you're doing this in remembrance of, but that's really cannibalism. Like technically you're on some
Well, I
Dahmer
mean, it
thing.
depends what, again, like as a Catholic, yeah, definitely, because that
Mhm.
is the body and then it transmute, whatever.
Yeah,
There's
yeah, no, no.
transmutation in that.
In the
But
Christian
like,
community, it's the same. Basically the
not
same.
in, like, not for me, it was a representation of
Uh-huh,
Christ's
uh-huh.
body. So the bread was just a representation. We weren't actually drinking
I
the
mean, but
blood
it's
and
the
the,
same. But
yeah.
technically, yeah,
Oh, for sure. For sure. But what
yeah,
I'm saying is like,
yeah, yeah.
this is what we have the answers for everything
Right,
to
right,
counter
right,
everything,
right, right, right. There's
So,
the.
so yeah, what I found is these people were so full of love for each
Mm-hmm,
other.
mm-hmm,
There were married people who were having naked conversations with other co-hosts that were not their spouses and
mm-hmm,
having a grand old time, and nobody was like having a problem with this, and I was
mm-hmm,
like, what? Ultimate respect for each other.
mm-hmm,
Is respect for each other's like opinions. They didn't have to all agree. What is that?
mm-hmm,
I didn't
mm-hmm,
understand that. I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean you're not trying to convince them that you're right? My whole
yeah,
life was built around,
that's the whole being
oh, I was
of
not allowed to
religion.
have my own thought. Like if the way I said my sentence didn't sound right to my mom, like how
Mm-hmm,
the thinking is,
mm-hmm,
I would have to shift the wording and I'd have to be very specific about
mm-hmm,
how that came out, right? And like love her, love my mom, and I'm so thankful for the way that she did bring me up because she always had me think future and how's that going to
mm-hmm,
affect other things and to
mm-hmm,
really not judge people's actions for what they are and to flip the other side and love them and pray for the people that I didn't like. So I'm really thankful for the way that she helped me to grow emotionally towards other people. So I had a very like loving emotional way. Like I don't sit there and be the victim about how people are treating me necessarily.
mm-hmm.
And I mean I am grateful for that. There was a lot of love for others in that way. Um but again, back to Playboy, I just was blown away with how happy they were and they definitely had joy in their lives. They weren't miserable.
It was everything opposite of what religion teaches you.
I was like, okay, well, what else is not true? Right? So I remember this, like, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to jump out of the box for a second and I'm going to go look and try this on for size. And then I'd stand outside the box and I'd look into the Christianity box and I'd be like, oh my gosh, like that's weird. Or that looks, and I started looking at the purity movement and I was like, that is creepy as fuck. Like, I was like, what is this? And then I'd jump back in the box and be like, oh, okay, I can't do that. I can't, like, I'm dishonoring God. And there was so much fear about that. Okay. So finally the day came when I was like, this just doesn't make any sense. And I can't go back to believing it. Like, it just doesn't. And so I'm okay, because I was praying the whole journey through. Like, God, show me the way. And I'm like, God, if you're as powerful as you say, like, you can obviously show me what the truth is. And you're not. You're showing me other things. So, like, I'm not dishonoring you. I'm literally asking you every single day for the truth and to show me, to explain something. Why does this not add up or whatever? And I was in, like I said, I wasn't discontent with the church. I didn't have an issue. I was just like doing my own due diligent research because I thought this person to just change their minds,
something. Okay. And it's so funny because I can resonate with that. Before I left the church, because after joining the military at 17, I was in the church for like 6 years, strong. And I was an enthusiast. But people started to leave and they started talking about different types of things. And at first, when you leave a church, you're not supposed to say anything. Nobody's allowed to talk to you, like cast out. So at first you're like, well, they must have did something, and you start, but then when you start to hear what people are saying and their reasoning, and it makes you curious enough to go look. And that's how it kind of played out to me to where I was like, okay, I started studying psychology. And then it was like, okay, so why is it all of these different religions? And why is it like some things just not adding up? So God, you're going to have to really show me what is going on. And the path that God has led me to truth and freedom has not been anything like I would have thought, because it has taken me so far out of religion to where now I have learned so much, and I don't know everything, but you do get so far away from being in that structured thinking to where now you're like, I could never think like, and you don't want to fault people who are still that extreme, but it's like, look, I've woken up and I'm trying to help you wake up now. Whether you want to wake up or not is on you. But and a lot of people, they are not open to even hearing anything outside.
Well, it's that whole thing, like, we are wired to stay safe and survive. And so if you're told that outside of this place it's awful and that there's no love and there's no joy and, people are miserable, then number one, you're going to want to stay safe in that. And if you think you're going to be kicked out if you don't agree, then you're going to just agree. And you're not really going to think about it. And you're just going to believe that you're in the safest place. And so there has to be something like pretty big in order for you to even consider questioning it, And I didn't hate God. I still don't hate God. I just, for a while, didn't believe that he existed. Not the same way as I was taught,
Right.
Because as I was studying, it was like, well, there's a perfectly natural explanation for this. So I don't really need God to explain that. So, like, take God away and that still can happen. And that's still very explainable. So a lot of that kind of stuff happened that I was taught nothing could happen without God kind of thing. So anyways. So a lot of unpacking of my religious programming, and oddly enough, it's pretty obvious that this would happen if you know Christianity at all. But the elders came and they asked, what was going on and if I believed still. And I said, I just can't believe that. Not like you or whatever. Mind you, I was.
Hi, I'm Casey, Dr. Casey. Welcome to Speaking Freedom. We are happy to have you, and we hope that we are able to help you in every way possible. Have a good evening.
Church pianist and the worship leader and all that, right? I was never allowed to play the piano again at church.
And and it's crazy because you're not supposed to be ostracized for your understanding, because literally the Bible says the truth will set you free, but also to study to show yourself approved. But a lot of people have been so fear mongered into thinking that the Bible is the only thing that offers truth or offers value, that they won't even read any books outside. I remember when I was in church, they basically told us not to study any other religions or get any other information. And when you're in it, you're thinking like, I know, because anything else is bad and it got to be sin, or it's the devil, or it's the enemy.
And the devil's going to use that to convince me and draw me away. But the thing is, we require every other religion to investigate their faith.
But nobody,
because ours is the truth. But we and I'm like, if we can't even investigate our faith and we require that of others, why should we be so scared to investigate our faith if we have the truth? And that really hit home for me. It was like, why should we be so afraid of that? Like, God has control and he knows who. Anyways, we could go on for forever, but let's get to how I became a sex positive relationship designer.
Okay.
So in Playboy, I discovered the show called Swing with Michael and Holly, and I don't know if you know them. So here's this couple. They're talking about having sex with other people while they're married. I was like, what is this? Like, what? This does not compute, because you save yourself for marriage. Sex is the glue that keeps people together. Right? Like, you can't share that with someone else, because it's like tape. Every time, this is what we're told as teenagers, every time you stick that tape onto someone, have sex with them, and peel that tape off, it gets less and less sticky. So by the time you get to your spouse, you're not gonna be able to stick, because if you've shared that with other people, it's not sticky, right? So here's the thing. Sex is supposed to be the rubric. So sex is supposed to be the thing that tells you, that keeps you together as a couple, and tells you how successful your relationship is being.
Right.
But it's also the thing we're not allowed to talk about and we don't know anything about.
Right.
Welcome to
you can't talk about
welcome to your honeymoon.
Right.
You're like, what the fuck am I doing?
And if you've never had sex before, it's even more difficult and even more makes you even more anxious and causes more anxiety, because you don't know what you're doing or what to expect.
Right. And so, and then add this other thing, like, and we could talk about this on Monday, but like the idea of oral sex, I was like, what? No, that's a terrible thing. Like, how could you do that? I've changed my mind on that. Don't worry. But like, it's just all these things that you're told, like, but all of a sudden you're supposed to flip a switch once you get married, because now all sex is allowed and there's freedom within marriage, and you can, that doesn't happen overnight. You have to you got to work on that. You got to develop that. And anyways, there's a lot to that.
So here how are all did these people. Show?
Yeah. So here I am, like, what the hell is going on? And at the same time, I was like, but relationship goals, like, they're so connected and they're celebrating with each other and they're having so much fun together. Like, how can this be a bad thing? And I knew I had always wanted that kind of connection with my husband, and I didn't have that. It was a very, like, follow the rules, do the right things kind of relationship. And it was good. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't like all of a sudden this idea that there's no sin.
Was that the first like real display of freedom that allowed you to kind of branch off and venture off?
Well, it was the first thing that allowed me to just kind of start thinking about sex in a different way and exploring things and listening to podcasts and educating myself about things, sex, all things sex positive. So my journey to freedom really is through this sex positive journey. And I became very sex positive, where I was no longer, this is the most beautiful thing, and I could cry when I say this, but I no longer was judging anybody for their decisions and their choices in life, which was the most freeing thing.
In life or with sex in particular?
Mostly, well, life in general, but sex particularly, because that was so taboo. But
Right.
like, if you can accept anything in sex, you pretty much, that it translates to most other things in life. And I remember the day, so I had this a cappella group, and a lot of them were, I had met through the church because I was an accompanist for this big choir, and it was an ecumenical church, you know, like, and so a lot of them are Catholics or, you know, Episcopalians or all these like not born again evangelical Christians, right? So, but they all would call themselves Christians easily, right? So these ladies, there was like 8 of us in this a cappella group, and we're all in the living room, and I had been going through this journey, and I was better in my mind. I was better than them because I was a Christian and I had the truth, and they didn't, even though they claimed that they were Christians too. But I was like, yeah, no, you don't understand. You don't have the right truth, you know. I have the right truth. Is my job is to convert you and to show you the actual truth, you know. And I remember the day I was sitting there and I looked around the room and I was like, I am no better than anybody in this room. And that was when the shackles just dropped, you know, like I was free to love.
So what was it in that moment? What was it in that moment that clicked?
That I had been like looking at all these things that weren't quite adding up with it. And all of a sudden I was like, how do I know that I know that I know that I have the ultimate truth? That's ridiculous. And these things are falling apart. They've never said they were better than me or acted like they were better than me. Why on earth would I think that my truth that I've just been told, I didn't go and question it. I'm just trusting what someone told me my whole life. So I don't know if it's true. So as I was researching, I realized that a lot of stuff isn't adding up, and Christians do a lot of cherry picking in the Bible. And there's a lot of things that aren't talked about in the Bible. And I did a lot of listening to The Thinking Atheist, fabulous podcast, by the way. And it was so, eye-opening. And he was a fundamentalist Christian who was a Christian radio host, and his parents were both apologists. So apologetics is like the study of Christianity and basically proving that it's right. It's all the things like why the Bible is true and all that. So both his parents were apologists, and he left the faith and had all these like realizations and was shunned by his family. And I mean, that's a big thing. Like when I finally shared with my family that I didn't believe anymore, it was awful because they're still devastated 10 years later. Now we have a relationship. We don't have to talk about that, you know, but like, it's not easy. There's a lot of reasons why don't bother questioning anything. Right? So that was the first big moment of freedom. And in that I was like exploring my sexuality and just getting more comfortable with myself. And then I was able to start having guy friends again, which was so beautiful. Because I just got to be myself. And it's just like, there was this new honeymoon phase, right? Like it was just so amazing to both get to know each other in a different way and get to know sort of our truths. So fast forward like 3 years ago, we realized that we're very, very different people, and that, you know, all the things that we really want in a relationship and value, we're not the same. We're not moving in the same direction. And so the conversation was had that, you know, like in poker, we've had a good run. You know, we should like fold them and go our separate ways or whatever. So that was 3 years ago, right at the beginning of COVID. And we're still in the same house. So it was a very conscious uncoupling. And it's great because we aren't enemies. We still live in the same house. And we're, you know, selling the house soon. But to be able to do that taught me a lot of things. And prior to us, you know, separating was this huge shift in me. I went through a really big depression, or you could say a dark night of the soul. That was like, I was burnt out from work. There was just so much going on, and I was feeling very unloved and questioning so many things, right? And we're both sort of figuring out like our roles in this world, right? Like how things look and you know, and so I had rebuilt my whole worldview and trying to figure out like the word self-care to me was like a bad word. Like I couldn't even say it because it was so selfish in my mind. So I did some counseling and kind of worked through and was looking at like some of my core beliefs and I was like, "Oh, I have really healthy core beliefs about people." I didn't realize, holy shit, I was so codependent. And I didn't realize that because I'd always been pretty independent and but like we triggered each other so much, you know, and all the things I'd been taught about marriage, that's not what was happening. And I was trying my very best all the time, sacrificing. But that's not what they wanted either, right? Like they wanted me to be my own person. It just so many things. And we came to the realization, right, that um I didn't understand boundaries. I thought boundaries was offense and things like that. So I got really clear on what is boundaries and what is this and what is that. And oh my gosh, my mind was like blown away, you know? And I had always done coaching like with my students because I'm a private music teacher. So I'm a voice coach, a voice teacher. I'm an accompanist, a pianist. I teach piano. I was a choir director. So like the connections that I made with people, of course, it's all stuff I could do as a mom, right? So
Right.
I did it. So like before COVID, I had 40 plus students in 3 different schools and worked in the high schools and stuff. And I mean, my students were like, they would talk to me about anything. And so many students, I was seeing sort of their sexual awakening, like recognizing that maybe they were bi or they were this because I was so open about not just buying into the box, the programming. And so it gave them freedom to just kind of open up about little things. And then I didn't judge that. And I would be like, yeah, isn't that crazy how people believe that? Da, 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 da. Or and just all of a sudden they felt this commonality and that, you know,
You became a
this
safe space.
yeah, and I was very much a safe space. So there's a lot of life coaching happening in my lessons. And I would say this to all my parents. I would be like, you know, I will teach your student, that's fine, but I just want to let you know that some lessons there may not be very much singing because it's a safe place. And a lot of times it becomes like a counseling session or therapy. I said, it's cheaper than therapy. So, you know, it's up to you if you want that. I'm just letting you know that sometimes it's not just going to be about the music. And they were like, yes. And then some were like, I'm spending for music. So, and that was usually the Christians, funny enough. Don't talk to my kid about anything. Uh-huh. Okay. We won't have authentic conversations. Okay. You know, because I was a big scary person now.
Right.
So anyways, all that to say that I just always had a passion for, you know, maybe being a therapist or a coach or whatever. And I didn't really know about coaching very much. And so this process was something that I've always naturally done. I'm very intuitive. I've always been able to read people like this without them even telling me their story. Like it's just like I knew.
Right.
And it's so interesting. And I always counseled people about relationships like from the time I was in high school. Always. Like and for all intents and purposes, like we had a great relationship. We had a great marriage because it really could have been horrid because we're so opposite. Like there's no way that should have worked for that long. And we have 3 children, almost all adults now. 2 of them are adults. And you know, like they're amazing and they're so like intelligent and independent and they are sex positive and they can do all the things and I'm just so proud. So we were very good parents together. But the biggest fear I had was this fear of failure, right? Of saying, well, I should be content or I should just suck it up or you know, like how dare I want more? You
A
know?
lot of people feel that way.
Yeah. And it's, you know, once I let go of that programming that, you know, sometimes relationships are for a season and that's awesome. I love how I'm not gonna be able to think of her name right now. Oh, let's see if I can remember her name. Maybe you'll know as I say it. The book, is it Tamed? Oh my God. She was a Christian. She married a woman after she's married to a soccer player So if you know who I'm talking about, chime in with that name because it is not coming to me right now. But
Hey,
she
it's okay.
said,
Just tell us
she
the.
says, she says, you know, think about relationships like a perennial garden or an annual garden. And some like annuals are no less valuable than perennials.
Mhm.
They're beautiful. They bring something to the garden. When they die, they enrich the soil and they make it more ready for next year's annuals. And then you have perennials that come back every year and they're beautiful, but they have a different purpose. And we don't judge a perennial and we don't judge an annual. They both serve a purpose and they all feed the ground so that we can have a more beautiful garden and it comes back every year. And when she said that, I was like, wow, that makes so much sense. Like this season now is over and it's time for me to grow a new garden. And it's so incredible and I have such an incredible boyfriend now. It's just it's like night and day when you're really aligned with someone and you have the same values and you learn to not be codependent and you learn who you are and what it is that you desire and you want and you feel safe to do that. And that takes a lot of unprogramming and shedding those beliefs and things like that. And so I feel like my mission is to help people break free and they could still be in the same marriage. That's fine. Like
Well,
no
that was
hard
going
feelings.
to be one of my questions. Do you think that your freedom was codependent of your marriage ending, or do you think that it could have survived without you and you still being free the same way? Do you think that it had the possibility of survival?
It could have if we wanted the same things and we really didn't.
Right.
Um and so we both found freedom in different ways and recognized that we weren't being our best selves with each other. But we also, if we're being honest, and we knew this from the beginning, it was always hard for us. Like it never, like you and I are having a conversation from the time we started talking was super easy. Never did we have that. Not even once was it not an awkward conversation to sit and talk.
So would that have been a red flag for you now that it
Yes.
wasn't? I mean, because
Yes.
people
Yeah.
people
So
act like
my red flags now.
go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say my red flags now is like if I can't talk easily with you and just feel a peace and calm in my body, you're not my people. Two, if I can't cuddle with you, I'm not gonna have sex with you.
Right. It turns off. Yeah. So because a lot of people think that, you have to work through certain things. Now, of course, we know different, but how would you help other people to understand the importance of being able to relate and have conversations, comfortable conversations
Yep.
earlier on?
I think that if you find that everything you're doing feels like work and you don't have an ease of being yourself and that yourself is valued, it's going to be really hard to continue with that. And you can, just depends what your values are. Like I could have stuck with it and make it work, but I would have been giving up a piece of myself continuously. And I could sacrifice that, but I just wasn't willing to anymore because our whole marriage was hard. We worked hard and we made it work and we had great times, but it always required a lot of work. And there's just, and what I didn't understand, and so I work with my clients a lot about like, everybody says communication is the most important thing in a marriage, but like, if you don't have connection and you don't have safety, it doesn't matter what words you say.
Right.
You're not going to be able to communicate.
Right.
And this is why cheating happens all the time because we're afraid to share our fantasies. We're afraid to share our desires, and sharing them and accepting them with grace and safety doesn't mean that you're saying yes to that. It doesn't mean that someone has to go out and sleep with someone else.
Right.
But if you can't even say, I'm very attracted to other people and I'd really love to sleep with them, but I won't because I honor our commitment. But like, could we have a conversation about it? Because maybe we could use it in fantasy. Maybe we could just use that energy to bring to us. But if you can't even acknowledge to yourself that that's something that you want, then how are you going to
or if you have to hide it from your person, you're always trying to sneak and you hide in the fact that you're still human, basically, because a lot of times, like you said earlier, we disconnect from being humans once we enter into this super realm of religion or this space to where now we have to turn off these certain things. But no, all of those things have been given to us for a reason, to be used to help us, to guide us into and through the things of life. But those things shouldn't be always you're toiling, always you're a whole bunch of elbow grease. No, my elbows hurt now. The grease is worn out. I need some WD-40 for my elbows, okay?
But if your programming says that, if your belief is that, everything is a test to see your faithfulness or to see if you can make it through, then you're not going to value your own desires. You're really not.
You're going to think that sacrificing is honorable.
Value your spouse's desires, if they don't. And what if, like, we don't want to know that they don't really think about us every second of the day. We'll just sit in that fantasy, and hearing it is going to destroy us. But actually, we don't think about them every second of the day. So why would it be any different? Why can't we just be honest and have authentic conversations? And so that's really what I like to bring to the table. It's like, let's really look at the programming. This is what you've been taught. And if you were religious, add this and this and this, and they're like, whoa, that's so true. I never even thought of it. Yeah. Exactly. And they're like, oh, so first is awareness, right? Let's learn what it is we're working with here. And so my program is called Breaking Free from Monogamy. But it's not to be confused with the fact that I don't think monogamy is wrong. Like, there's nothing wrong with monogamy. It's the mono mindset. It's the programming that we have about monogamy only that sets us up to fail, right? Because now your safety is in your one relationship and you own them, and, you have to be jealous if they look or talk or think about anybody else. And that means something about you. It means you're not valuable. That's bullshit. That's bullshit. It's such bad programming. And not one person can meet our needs, and not one person can fulfill us. And we can choose to be okay with that, but we need to be real. We need to be realistic about the fact that, no, you're going to get married and that person is not going to meet all your needs. And that's okay.
Right.
And it's also okay to maybe include other people in your relationship that can meet other needs. And that doesn't have to be a threat.
And it doesn't always have to be sex. It could be other things, because connection and communication far supersedes sex. And although sex is a portion of it, sex is supposed to be the bonus, the add-on, the extra dividend to it.
Sex is not the glue.
Right. It's
the
not.
Connection and safety is the glue. And that,
I mean, it may get sticky, but it's definitely not the glue. So as we get ready, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
As we get ready to wrap up, what are some lasting thoughts that you would like to give to our readers? I just want to highlight that you have this awesome glowing aura coming in from the light. It's just like, thank you.
The fingers of God, isn't it? Isn't it the fingers of God?
Spirit fingers through the light. So what would be your final thoughts and your lasting words?
I think that give yourself permission to discover what it is that you truly love and enjoy and desire and fantasize about. Give yourself that freedom, because having a desire and acting upon a desire are two very different things. But if you don't ever ask yourself what your desire is, how are you going to know if you even want to implement that or if it's worth it? So part of my breaking free method is like fantasize, release, embrace, and empower. FREE. And it's like you have to start with thinking about what the potential options are so you can dream a little bit. Right. And
So at
you
least you
can
can
do that.
figure out what you know, what you want, and what you don't want. Because
Yeah.
within going through that mentally, you're able to determine, okay, do I really want this, or is this just a nice idea?
Right. And as a designer, like if you have a designer come in to help you redesign your space, what is it that you like? How do you want to use this space? What are your favorite colors? What's your, what do you like to do in your free time? Do you like to have a lot of people over? Do you want it just for yourselves? Like, what is the purpose? What is it that you're going to find out what you like? And you have to tell that designer so that they can come up with appropriate solutions for that. And
Right.
they'll bring you the right color palette. My color palette happens to be relationship styles and ways of being in relationship. And so when we look at your relationship as a couple, we can go, well, what is it that you truly desire? Maybe there is a way you can have your cake and eat it too without hurting
Right.
someone. Because I don't want you to destroy your relationship if it's a good relationship, if you have connection, if you have love, if there's potential. And it's not for everyone. Ethical non-monogamy is not for everyone. And I will tell you right away, this is
Right.
not for
It's
you.
not for everybody.
Because
I
I'm not
agree.
bringing drama into that magical world of mine, because these people are my family. Like the people in my sex positive world are just so amazing. And the connections we have are just beyond what you can imagine. And I'll tell you, the healthy relationships I see, the healthy marriages I see in this world are beyond what you even can imagine, because you wouldn't even think it's possible,
I agree.
according to the programming you've been told. That should
I,
not work. It should
yeah.
not work, but it's magical and it does work if you do it right. So I'm here to be your safe blanket, your designer, to help you create what it is that you want and hold your hand through that process of redesigning your relationship to meet your desires and your fantasies and your desires. I mean, anything that you want is possible, and there's no judgment.
The brighter the light shines, I just feel like that God is like letting us know, like, this was good. This was a good conversation, and you really brought a lot of light and encouragement to people, because so many people are stifled by the limitations of their beliefs and the things that they don't even know are possible or can't even fathom to begin to think because of fear. So I really appreciate the value that you have brought to this program, and I cannot wait to talk to you on Monday about the world of sex, because this is going to be an amazing conversation. I just want to say it is going to be an amazing conversation.
Prepare to have your mind blown, because there ain't nothing I struggle talking about. Like,
I'm so excited for Monday, like, because in this conversation we've had to kind of not limit it, but kind of because we have a whole show that is going to blow some minds coming on Monday, and I am super excited about that. So, okay, it won't be Monday when y'all hear this. It'll be like maybe a Monday that'll be coming up. It'll definitely play back to back consecutively.
Oh, perfect.
So do you have any books, or can you tell us where to find you so that we can follow and catch up?
Absolutely. So I have a very brief website, KarineBenard.com. It's going to be changing, but it tells a little bit of my story. My podcast website is breakingfreeauthentically.com. And there you can go listen to all my shows. And again, it tells a little bit more of my story. But one thing I want to give all of your listeners is access to the free quiz. And it's called Is Monogamy Right for Me? Okay. And so it's a really be prepared to have your mind blown or expanded, because there's a lot of questions in there that are not PG. So go take the quiz at offers.KarineBenard.com. It'll take you to the quiz, and you can, answer all those questions, and it'll give you a score. And I can go through the score with you if you want to understand what this means. We can talk. You can book a call with me, or you can go into my program, which is the 8-week program, Breaking Free from Monogamy, which is all about reprogramming with hypnosis and everything. It's pretty awesome. It's exciting.
So I'm definitely going to probably add that test that for the sexual monogamy to my resource. I have a
Oh, nice.
section on my website that is just full of resources where you can do like spiritual tests, like gifting tests, things to kind of assess who you are, where you are, and how you should move forward in life. So
Mm-hmm.
I would love to be able to add that to one of those things that they can kind of click on to get more information about themselves, because what I found is that the more insight you can get about
Mm-hmm.
yourself, the better off you'll be, because you'll be able to shape your future based on your reality and the responses. And you
Absolutely.
know if you hold back on some questions and how that will affect you. But it's good to be able to have those tools to
Yeah,
be able to use to push you through to your purpose when
exactly.
doubt and the limitations are surrounding you.
And I think it's worth mentioning too that there's never any pressure to switch your relationship style. Sometimes just being aware that you're normal for having these
Mm-hmm.
desires and
Mm-hmm.
fantasies is all it takes. Because if you know anything about addiction, addiction sits in shame.
Mm-hmm.
If we have shame and guilt about anything, we hide it. We don't talk about it. Then we make it secret. And it's this thing we obsess about. And then all of a sudden, it's so big, you can't talk about it with anyone. So you have to go act on it to get it out of your system. And what
Mm-hmm.
happens? You have an affair, or you do things that are unhealthy for you. But if you all of a sudden were like, oh, I'm so normal, this is normal, it's no longer a thing you have to obsess about. And then you
Right.
can make choices.
And I definitely have a theory that underexposure creates the obsessive behavior, and
Yes.
overexposure, it kind of numbs you
Yeah.
to certain things. So if you do it too much, if you watch porn too much, or if you do anything
Mhm.
too much, even with going to church too much, you become numb. It doesn't have the same effect on you because you're used to it. It's like, okay, you're just going through the motions.
Yeah.
But if you find a way to have balance, because if you don't get enough exposure, then it's like you said, you're it's the secret thing, but you're trying to do everything that you can. It's
Mm-hmm.
almost like when a child has strict parents, the moment that they get a little bit of freedom, it's like wow, it's no coming back from that either, because now they've had a taste of freedom, versus if you gave them a little bit of freedom, give them a little bit of freedom, then when it's time for them to be set free, it's like, oh, well, I've been here before. This is nothing new. This is not exciting for me. I mean, it may stimulate me, but it's not like, oh my God, I'm just going to get lost in it. And it's so important for people to understand balance, because we are raised and programmed for extremes. It's either all this or all of that. But there is a balance between sexuality and spirituality. It's
Yeah,
just you have to find that balance and realize that it all connects together.
absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. I loved it.
is there any questions that you have for me before we go?
Oh man. I'm
Or
sure I'm
do you
gonna
want to
have some.
wait into the world
I
of
was
sex
gonna
because
say, yeah, I said I probably have questions that I'll want to ask you on Monday after I've had a couple days to think about it. But like um I'm so curious about your story too, out of like you did talk about it a little bit, and then just how the military affected things. And like have you found that the military, being in the military, did you move a lot?
I
Like,
moved a little while. I was only in for about 4 years,
okay.
around about. But overall, when it comes to the military, it made me a more responsible person. Like I don't really fit in with a lot of my peers because
Mhm.
they don't have that sense of um service and responsibility, and that
Discipline.
that
Yeah.
dress that structure of the military. But it has helped me largely because it makes me more focused when it comes to um it pushed me in the church because I was looking for that camaraderie that the
Mhm.
military offers. But
Yeah.
it also sustained me when it was time to walk away, because I understood framework, I
Yeah.
understood structure, I understood that, yes, you can have faith and be spiritual, but there also has to be alignment, and it also has to add up. The math has
Yeah.
to math
Yeah.
in order
Yeah.
for it
Yeah.
to really make
Yeah.
sense. So
I
it
love
really
I love that you say that. Like that whole community piece really is so big, right? And that's what I tell people is like you can come into this world, this non-monogamy world, simply for the community, because a sex positive community, like we were talking at the very beginning,
different.
It's different. There's you get to be yourself. You're not judged for being yourself. And it's like, it feels like sometimes the only place on earth that you can just be yourself. And we're all looking to belong. And so, you know, a lot of people are in this world and they never have sex with other people other than their spouse or their partner.
Right.
But they're in this world and they observe and they just go off this energy, right? And it's awesome.
Because this is a portion of my own journey to freedom. Like I've had, I'll say freedom phases, because it was getting free from the religious programming and removing the shame of thinking outside of the box that you've been given. Because some of the conversations that I'm having today, 5 years ago, they would have put me into like a mood, and now it's just like, no, like it just is what it is, and I don't feel bad about it. But it has been like my whole journey has shifted, and the stages of coming from religion to coming from being married to coming to being a stay-at-home mom who, you know, focused solely on that, to really accepting my gift and my purpose, because I have a lot of dreams. I see shit that actually ends up happening, and it's weird because at first I thought that it was normal. I thought that everybody had dreams. I thought that like I just was like, okay, it's just normal. Like, does everybody have dreams? You have no dream. You have no, like, so it has been a little bit of a process. So now I am in this stage to where I am ridding myself of the preconceived notions of how you should act at a certain age, because you shouldn't be this way or you shouldn't be that way. And I am faced with a lot of judgment that I put out there, because I used to be like, well, at 40, you shouldn't be dressing like this. You should be. Right. And I'm at 40 now. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. At 40, you learn how sexy you really are, because you realize that when you was 20, you was still a child. You didn't really, you didn't know what you was doing with.
My daughters sometimes are like, Mom, are you leaving the house like that? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to the club. Like, I'm not. Like, it's all good. They're like, okay.
When you're younger, you think that 40 is old. So you think that it's supposed to be certain things. But when you actually turn 40 and you are like, wait a minute, I am not old. This shit is like, this is lit. This is the time to be alive, because I have overcome all the trial. Well, not for everybody, but I have overcome all of the trials and the tribulations of being a 20-year-old, of being in my 30s. And, so coming into this stage, I've started going to different parties, and these are the things that we'll talk about on Monday. But I started doing a lot more into the sex positive community, and I am a reserved person. Like, it's certain stuff that I'm just not going. The first time I meet you, I'm not taking all my clothes off. I'm not doing certain things just because I don't know yet. I gotta, I'm still filling myself out. But it is a very different experience than anything that I've ever felt before, and it's actually very liberating to be in environments where people are free to be themselves. Even if I'm not that person, it is a freedom that allows me to know that if I wanted to explore something outside of what I'm used to, that it would be okay in those spaces.
And safe.
And I think my biggest challenge because I'm about a year into this, as I explore as a sex educator and sex coach, I'm like, okay, there's the things that I know from my sexual experience, and then there's the things that I've learned from the program that I went. And now it's time for me to kind of go out there. And it has been a very liberating experience, because you're seeing that the world is not all cookie cut shapes, like it's not perfect based on what people tell us perfection is supposed to be, but it's definitely perfect unapologetically.
Oh, it's beautiful. It is.
Yes, it really is.
Authenticity is like, I say, when it comes, my little tagline on my podcast is, when it comes to sex positivity, authenticity is the key. And it's so true.
Really is.
Like, you don't want to be a shithead. And,
right.
Like, it's like respecting people's boundaries and respecting yourself. And it's like, it's all so much about authenticity, and those who thrive in it are authentic and not afraid to be authentic. So that's where we'll leave it. How's that?
Yes, I really enjoyed having you on the show. I cannot wait to speak to you on the world of sex. That is going to be fun. But thank you again. And we appreciate you. Until next time.
All right. Take care. Thank you so much.
If you've enjoyed this video, like, share, subscribe, and turn on your notifications. New episode every Friday.